Jason's story part. Captain Draxus leaned back in his seat aboard the rust bucket they'd charitably called the Perseverance. It had seen better days, but then again, so had he. His team, an elite group of dimension-hopping soldiers, were huddled in the cramped cockpit, staring out at the vast expanse of nothingness. It was, to put it kindly, underwhelming. \n\n\. Is this it? Zarn grumbled, his voice dripping with all the enthusiasm you'd expect from a man who thought interdimensional flora was a fancy way of saying weed. I thought forgotten alien vaults would be more. Vaulty. \n\n. Beats me. Draxus shrugged, fixing his gaze on the floating relic ahead. I guess the aliens forgot to add the neon sign saying mysterious place of doom. \n\n. The vault was a massive structure, an oversized lunchbox adrift in the void, save for the fact that it was more likely to contain death spores than sandwiches. Its surface was a patchwork of alien metals, dull and menacing, promising all sorts of unpleasant ways to die. \n\n. So, remind me why we're risking our necks for a bunch of alien plants, asked Keela, the team's demolitions expert. Her eyebrows were raised high enough to suggest she was 2 seconds away from questioning Draxus's sanity. \n\n. Draxus chuckled darkly. Simple. Money. And because Command thinks a few seeds could save our sorry hides from the cosmic dustbin. \n\n. Keela pursed her lips. And if it doesn't, \n\n. Then we might as well plant him under our graves. \n\n. The team shared a collective groan, each one remembering the last time Command had promised salvation. It had ended with them knee-deep in alien muck, which, come to think of it, was probably still in Zarn's boots. \n\n. All right, focus, Draxus said, trying to sound like he cared about protocol. We've got a force field ahead. Advanced alien tech. Probably more advanced than our hit-it-till-it-works strategy. \n\n. Think it's impenetrable, Zarn asked, tapping the console with a grubby finger. \n\n. Considering it's still floating there after eons. Yeah, I'd say it's seen more action than you on a Saturday night. \n\n. Zarn huffed. You're just jealous of my charm. \n\n. That's what they call it these days. Keela snorted. \n\n. Draxus turned to the screen, which was displaying an incomprehensible wall of symbols and diagrams. The problem is, this thing doesn't exactly have an instruction manual. \n\n. Well, if it did, it'd probably be in a language none of us could read, Keela said. We're just supposed to poke it and hope something happens. \n\n. That's the spirit, Draxus replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. If all else fails, we can always try begging. \n\n. Keela glanced at the vault, then back at Draxus. So, are we going in guns blazing, or do we do the cautious approach for once? \n\n. Draxus rubbed his chin, considering their options. Let's start with cautious. If that doesn't work, then Zarn can do his charming routine. \n\n. Zarn grinned. Ladies first, he quipped, earning him a playful punch from Keela. \n. The ship drifted closer, its sensors whirring like a drunken cricket trying to sing a love song. Draxus watched as the readings fluctuated, dancing around the same incomprehensible nonsense. \n. All right, Draxus said, standing up and stretching his arms. Keela, you get to play with explosives if we need 'em. Zarn, you're on tech duty. Great, Zarn muttered, pulling out a device that looked like it was held together with hope and duct tape. This baby's barely held together as it is. Just like us, Draxus replied, adjusting his suit. Let's make this quick. I don't want to spend another minute on this damn ship longer than I have to. They suited up in the cramped bay, the air thick with tension and the smell of sweat. Keela checked her explosives, counting each charge like a mother hen. Zarn flicked at his device, trying to coax it into cooperation. Remember, Draxus said, his tone serious for once. We're here to secure the seeds. In and out. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. Define unnecessary, Keela said, strapping on her gear. Anything that gets you killed before payday, Draxus replied, slapping the door release. The ship shuddered as the airlock cycled, the vacuum of space a silent reminder of their precarious existence. The team stepped out, their suits sealing them from the nothingness beyond. They floated towards the vault, the sight of it looming larger with each passing moment. It was the kind of thing that made you question why you'd ever signed up for this job. But then you remembered the pay and the thrill, and it all seemed worth it. Almost, Anyone else get the feeling we're not alone, Zarn asked, his voice crackling over the comms. Just your paranoia acting up again, Keela teased. Or maybe he's right, Draxus added, his eyes scanning the structure. It wouldn't be the first time aliens left a nasty surprise for would-be thieves. Great. Now I'm worried, Zarn muttered, fiddling with his device. They reached the surface of the vault, their boots making contact with a dull thud. The metal was cold, unwelcoming, and somehow alive with the energy of ages past. All right, Zarn Draxus said, nodding towards the force field. Do your thing. And Zarn approached the shimmering barrier, his device beeping like a faulty Geiger counter. He poked at the field, which responded with a flicker of light. Looks like it's still active, Zarn said, stating the obvious. Brilliant deduction, Sherlock, Keela quipped. Can you get us through, or are we going to have to find the back door? I'm working on it, Zarn replied, his fingers dancing over the device. This tech is older than my grandmother's jokes. And just as deadly, Draxus said, watching as Zarn's device began to hum. The force field shimmered, then pulsed, its surface rippling like water. Zarn stepped back, his eyes wide. I think I did something, he said, his voice a mix of triumph and terror. Let's hope it's a good something, Draxus said, motioning for the team to step back. The field flickered, then vanished, leaving nothing but an open portal into the vault. Well, that's one problem solved, Keela said, peering into the dawn. Now we just have to survive whatever's living in there. They stepped into the vault, the atmosphere shifting from the vast emptiness of space to something else entirely. It was cold, but not the kind of cold you'd associate with space. It was a living, breathing chill, the kind that crept into your bones and set up camp. Feels like someone's walked over my grave, Zarn muttered, his voice barely more than a whisper. You're "You're not important enough for that," Keela replied, her eyes scanning the shadows. In the interior of the vault was a labyrinth of corridors and chambers, each one more ominous than the last. The walls were lined with alien symbols, glowing faintly with a light that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of a dying heartbeat. "All right," Draxus said, pulling out his map. "The seed should be in the main chamber. Let's move." They navigated the corridors, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the silence. It was the kind of place that made you feel small and insignificant, but also terribly aware of your mortality. "Anyone else get the feeling we're being watched?" Zarn asked, his voice tense. "Just your paranoia," Keela replied, though her eyes darted nervously around. "Or maybe not," Draxus said, stopping as they reached a massive door at the end of the corridor. It was the kind of thing that screamed "Do not enter" in every language imaginable. "This must be it," Draxus said, stepping forward. "Looks like a fun place," Keela said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Let's just get the seeds and get out," Draxus said, placing his hand on the door. The door creaked open, revealing a chamber filled with. They were vibrant, colorful, and utterly alien. "Well, there you go," Draxus said, stepping inside. "Our ticket to salvation. Or a one-way trip to hell," Zarn added, eyeing the plants suspiciously. Keela approached one of the larger specimens, her eyes wide with wonder. "These things could change everything," she said, her voice filled with awe. Draxus nodded, though his eyes were fixed on the shadows that seemed to move at the edges of the room. "Let's grab what we can and get out of here," he said, his voice tense. Zarn and Keela began collecting samples, their movements quick and precise. Draxus kept watch, his eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of danger. "I've got a bad feeling about this," Zarn said, stuffing a handful of seeds into his pack. "Join the club," Draxus replied, his grip tightening on his weapon. They moved quickly, gathering as much as they could carry. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the silence oppressive. "All right, let's move," Draxus said, motioning for the team to head back. They turned to leave, but a sound stopped them in their tracks. It was a low, rumbling growl, the kind that sent a shiver down your spine and made your hair stand on end. "What the hell was that?" Keela whispered, her eyes wide. "Bad news," Draxus replied, his voice steady. "Very bad news." They backed towards the door, their movements slow and deliberate. The growling grew louder, accompanied by the sound of claws scraping against metal. "Run," Draxus said, his voice low and urgent. They bolted for the door, the sound of pursuit hot on their heels. The vault seemed to come alive with activity, the shadows writhing and shifting as they fled. They burst through the door and into the corridor, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. "What the hell was that?" Zarn gasped, glancing back. "Something not interested in sharing," Draxus replied, his mind racing. They made their way back through the labyrinth, the sound of pursuit. It was a desperate, frantic escape, one that left no room for mistakes. They reached the exit, the open portal a beacon of hope in the oppressive darkness. "Go, go, go," Draxus shouted, pushing his team through. /N/N they stumbled out of the vault and into the safety of space, their hearts pounding in their chests. /N/N the portal flickered, then sealed shut behind them, leaving only. Next time remind me to read the fine print on these missions. /N/N/. You mean there was a fine print Zarn asked, his voice laced with sarcasm. /N/N/. Probably, Draxus replied, glancing back at the sealed vault. But who reads that anyway? /N/N they floated back to the ship, their minds reeling from the experience. It was a close call, too close for comfort. /N/N/. Think Command will be happy with what we got? Keela asked, stowing her gear. /N/N/. They better be, Draxus said, settling into his seat. Or I'll personally shove these seeds up there, N/N. The ship's alarms blared to life, cutting him off mid-sentence. /N/N/. What now? Zarn groaned, his hands flying to the controls. /N/N/. Looks like we're not out of the woods. The alarm screeched like a banshee on intergalactic steroids, shaking the crew from their post-run jitters. Draxus glanced at the ship's control panel as if staring harder would make it stop. Spoiler alert, it didn't. What's the bloody problem now? Keela snapped, trying to catch her breath. We just escaped an alien treasure trove and some growling nightmare, and now this tinkin's got stage fright. Looks like the Perseverance has decided it doesn't like flying without a bit of drama, Zarn muttered, smacking the panel with the palm of his hand. The alarm only got louder. Really, it's like it's got its own bloody personality. Appropriate, Draxus said with a snort. A ship with a death wish piloted by a bunch of lunatics. Sounds like a sitcom waiting to happen. Keela yanked open a maintenance hatch and started fiddling with a mess of wires. Let's just find out what this is about before I'm tempted to set explosives on our own ship. A soft, almost soothing voice, completely at odds with the blaring alarm, filled the air. Attention, crew of the Perseverance. I am Zephyr, the guardian of the vault. Zarn's eyes widened and he stopped mid-wire poke. Did our ship just get a new friend, or am I finally losing it? Not a friend, Zephyr corrected, with the kind of patient condescension you'd expect from a kindergarten teacher. An observer, a guide. You have awoken me by interfacing with the vault's systems. Draxus chuckled darkly. Great, we're not alone. Just what I wanted, more company. Boss, should we be worried about this AI spying on us? Keela asked, though she didn't stop her tinkering. Depends, Draxus said, watching a series of holographic displays spring to life around them. Zephyr, you planning on killing us or something? Only if you attempt to harm the vault, Zephyr replied, sounding almost offended. My primary function is protection, but I am programmed to assist those with mutual interests. Mutual interests, Zarn echoed, clearly skeptical. You mean the seeds? Precisely. I offer a mind merge, Zephyr continued, with the kind of casual tone one might use to offer a cup of tea. By integrating with your consciousness, I can guide you safely and enhance your understanding of the vault's technology. Hold up, Keela said, dropping a cluster of wires. Mind merge. Sounds like a bad sci-fi flick, emphasis on bad. What's the catch? Zephyr's holographic form flickered into view, an androgynous figure made of light and data hovering above the control console. The risks are minimal, it assured. But there is always the possibility of adverse effects. Vague as hell, Draxus said, crossing his arms. What kind of adverse effects? Hallucinations, paranoia, temporary loss of motor functions, Zephyr listed like it was reciting a menu. But these are rare. Most users find the process enlightening. Most users, Zarn repeated. So there's a collection of brain-fried ship captains floating around out there. Draxus considered the offer, scratching at his chin. What do you guys think? Should we trust a talking light bulb with our brains? Keela shrugged. Could be worse. At least it's not trying to sell us an extended warranty. Zarn shook his head. I'm not thrilled about the idea, but if it gets us out of this mess. Look, Draxus said, turning to face his crew. This whole mission's been one giant leap of faith into a pile of crap. A little more insanity isn't gonna change much. Keeler raised an eyebrow. That's the pep talk. We're already screwed, so let's roll with it. Pretty much, Draxus replied, grinning. Zephyr, you know how to handle three minds at once. Zephyr's holographic form nodded, somehow managing to look both amused and patient. Simultaneous integration is possible. Please prepare yourselves. Zarn sighed, taking a deep breath. All right, let's get this over with. If I start speaking in tongues, just smack me. Keela closed her eyes, muttering something about wanting a raise after this. Draxus gave a mock salute to his crew before focusing on the floating hologram. The room seemed to pulse with energy, the lights dimming and reshaping until everything was a wash of color and sound. It felt like being sucked into a whirlpool of neon and static, where the laws of physics were more like gentle suggestions. Then, suddenly, it was over. Draxus blinked, steadying himself against the console. The control room looked the same, yet different. Colors seemed sharper, sounds more distinct, as if the universe had cranked up its resolution. Well, Zarn said, sounding strangely serene. This is trippy. Keela was looking at her hands with the kind of fascination usually reserved for people who'd never seen fingers before. I feel like I could taste colors. Focus, team, Draxus said, shaking off the disorientation. Zephyr, what's next? You have successfully integrated. Zephyr's voice echoed through their minds, feeling like a gentle breeze. I can now share my knowledge. The Vault's technology is accessible to you. Zarn tapped on his device, which now responded with uncharacteristic enthusiasm. I can read this now, he said, surprised. It's like the gibberish turned into less gibberish. That would be the point, Zephyr said with a hint of pride. With my guidance, you can navigate the vault more effectively. Keela frowned, rubbing her temples. I still don't trust this whole mind-merge thing. It's one bad dream away from going full nightmare. Noted, Draxus replied. But we're in too deep now. Let's use this advantage and get out before something else tries to eat us. They moved back to the main chamber, with Zephyr's instructions a whisper in their minds. The vault, once a maze of shadows and threats, was now a map of possibilities. Keela stopped at a console, her fingers flying over alien symbols that translated easily under the AI influence. This thing's got more traps than a paranoid billionaire's mansion, she said, disarming as she went. Good thing I've got the cheat sheet. Remember, we're not here for souvenirs, Draxus reminded, though the thought of pocketing a few alien gadgets was admittedly tempting. In and out, just like always. Yeah, cause that always goes so smoothly, Zarn said, snorting. Just another day in the life of us, the galaxy's least lucky adventurers. Their path took them deeper, past chambers that glowed with an otherworldly hue. Zephyr's guidance allowed them to avoid areas that registered as unpleasant, a term that seemed to cover everything from mild inconvenience to probable death. These readings suggest significant energy sources ahead, Zephyr informed, pulling up a translucent display of alien script. This is the central hub. Your primary objective is near, right? Draxus said, steeling himself. Everyone ready. No second chances here. Keela nodded, though she still looked skeptical. Ready as I'll ever be, which isn't saying much. Zarn gave 2 thumbs up, grinning. Let's do this before I start seeing unicorns. The door opened with a whisper of ancient mechanisms, revealing a cavernous chamber filled with pulsating energy. At the center stood a pedestal, atop which rested a crystalline orb containing the seeds, glowing with an intensity that screamed important plot device. There it is, Draxus murmured, stepping forward. Our ticket to survival. Let's make sure we get this right. Keela approached the pedestal, every muscle tense. If this thing explodes, I'm taking you all with me. Draxus chuckled, though the sound was tight with stress. Wouldn't have it any other way. Zarn stood back, monitoring the energy fluctuations. So far, so stable, but let's not stick around for the encore. Keela carefully retrieved the orb, its weight surprisingly light in her hands. The room's energy pulsed, momentarily going dark before stabilizing. All right, I've got it. Time to skedaddle. Zephyr, we're good to go, Draxus said, his heart hammering in his chest. Now how the hell do we get out without getting a new set of teeth courtesy of our shadowy friend from earlier? Proceed to the exit. I will engage defensive protocols, Zephyr replied, its voice steady as ever. See. Even the AI thinks we're worth saving, Zarn said, his sarcasm unwavering. Or it just wants us gone, Keela shot back, leading the way. The journey back was a blur of adrenaline and tension, each step bringing them closer to freedom. Zephyr's presence in their minds helped avoid potential pitfalls, both literal and metaphorical. As they reached the exit, the ship's interface lit up, signaling their impending departure. You're clear to leave, Zephyr said. Our time together has been interesting. Is that AI speak for get lost? Draxus asked, a smirk on his lips. I appreciate your cynicism, Zephyr responded, the closest a program could come to sounding amused. Farewell, crew of the Perseverance. With a final check of their gear, they stepped through the portal and back into space. The vault receded into the void, its mysteries left behind, at least temporarily. Well, that's done, Draxus said, the relief palpable in his voice. Let's hope Command has a nice fat paycheck waiting. If not, Keela said, her tone half-joking, we always know where to find more seeds. Zarn set course back to their rendezvous point, the ship humming with an odd sense of satisfaction. I could get used to this whole not dying in space thing. Draxus laughed, finally allowing himself to relax. Don't get comfortable. There's always another mission, another nightmare waiting in the wings. As the Perseverance glided through the void, the crew shared a moment of quiet camaraderie, each thankful for their own brand of chaos. Because at the end of the day, that chaos was home. An insane, unpredictable home, but home nonetheless. And with any luck, the seeds they'd nearly died for would make it all worth it. If not, well, they'd always find another way. After all, surviving the impossible was kind of their thing. The room swirled around Draxus, the aftermath of the mind merge feeling like a night out on cheap space rum and bad decisions. The colors were still too bright, sounds too sharp, and his crew, well, they looked like they were in the same psychedelic universe, which was somehow reassuring. Did I ever tell you guys I hate magic? Draxus muttered, gripping the console like it might fly away. Keela snorted, shaking her head. It's not magic, it's advanced technology. Totally different headache. Yeah, Zarn interjected, his eyes wide as he tried to process the alien symbols in front of him. Besides, if this fails, we can always blame it on technical difficulties. Technical difficulties being the nice way to say we're screwed, Draxus replied, trying to blink the hallucinations away. But every time he closed his eyes, memories clawed their way up from the depths, old missions, old failures. Faces of those he couldn't save, haunting him in freshly detailed 4K with surround sound. He shook his head, forcing his mind back to the present. This was no time for a walk down memory lane, a lane littered with the corpses of his regrets. Doc, you okay? Keela asked, peering at him like he might sprout wings and fly away. Never better, Draxus grumbled, a bitter smile on his lips. Now let's get this over with before I start auditioning for a space opera. Zarn tapped away, the alien script deciphering faster now thanks to Zephyr's integration. You know, for all the chaos, this isn't half bad. We might actually figure out how not to die for once. Don't jinx it, Keela warned, her eyes darting around as if expecting the universe to suddenly take offense and retaliate. But the universe didn't need much of a nudge. A sudden lurch sent them all sprawling, the room tilting like the ship had just decided to channel its inner roller coaster. Draxus barely managed to hold his lunch in as he scrambled to his feet. Zephyr, care to explain? Draxus called out, struggling to keep his voice steady. The vault systems are destabilizing, Zephyr replied, its voice calm despite the chaos. I believe the integration process may have triggered a security protocol. Of course it did, Draxus muttered. What do we do? Stabilize the core systems manually, Zephyr suggested, a hint of urgency creeping into its voice. The main console in the central chamber. Great. Just what we needed. A hands-on approach to not dying, Zarn said, already moving. Don't forget your screwdrivers, Keela quipped, trying to lighten the mood. As they stumbled through the corridors, the vault seemed to come alive around them, lights flickering and floors vibrating with an ominous hum. It was like being inside a giant, pissed-off beast, one that was none too happy about its guests. "Why does every mission end with us running for our lives?" Draxus asked, mostly to himself. "Because we're experts at pissing off things bigger than us," Zarn answered, giving Draxus a pat on the back. "It's kind of our thing." They reached the central chamber, its vast expanse dwarfed by the towering control console. Draxus stared at it, feeling a headache brewing. "All right, Keela, you take lead. Zarn, keep an eye on those energy readings." "Boss, you sure you're good?" Keela asked, concern lacing her voice. Draxus forced a grin. Yeah. Just a little mental indigestion. Nothing a good dose of survival can't cure." As Keela worked, Zarn hovered over her shoulder, the two of them a blur of activity. Draxus stood back, trying to focus on anything but the memories clawing at his brain, unwanted guests at a party he hadn't thrown. "You know, this would be easier if the vault came with an instruction manual," Zarn joked, breaking the tension just a fraction. Keela snorted. "It probably did, in the original alien language. Good luck translating that." Draxus chuckled despite himself, grateful for the familiar banter. His crew was his anchor, even when the universe conspired to drag him under. "Core systems show signs of stabilization," Zephyr chimed in, its tone encouraging. "You are making progress. See, we're not completely hopeless," Keela said, a hint of pride in her voice. "Just mostly." "Mostly hopeless is better than dead," Draxus replied, trying to keep the mood light. But even as they worked, the vault continued to tremble, a reminder that their time was running out. Draxus could feel the pressure building, the weight of responsibility pressing down like a vice. "Almost there," Keela said, her voice tight with concentration. "Just a few more adjustments." Zarn nodded, monitoring the readings. "Energy levels are fluctuating but holding. We might actually pull this off." Draxus wanted to believe them, to trust in their combined skills and the AI guidance. But his mind kept dragging him back to the past, to missions gone wrong and lives lost. "Draxus," Zephyr's voice cut through his thoughts, pulling him back to the present. "Focus. Your team's efforts depend on your leadership." He nodded, taking a deep breath. "Right. Focus. I can do that." With renewed determination, Draxus joined Keela at the console, lending a hand where he could. The vault continued to rumble, its anger a palpable force in the air, but they pressed on, refusing to give in. Finally, Keela stepped back, wiping sweat from her brow. "I think that's it. We've stabilized it, at least for now." "Confirmed," Zephyr said. "Systems are holding steady. You have a window for safe extraction." "Safe being a relative term," Zarn added, shooting Draxus a grin. "But hey, we're still breathing." "Breathing's good," Draxus agreed, feeling the tension ease from his shoulders. "Now let's get the hell out of here before something else goes wrong." With the system stabilized, the path back to their ship was less harrowing, though the vault still seemed to creak and groan around them, a reminder of their narrow escape. "Think Zephyr will miss us?" Keela asked as they neared the exit. "I doubt it," Zarn replied, a mischievous twinkle in his eye. "AI probably glad to see the back of us." "Can't blame it," Draxus said, the ghost of a smile on his lips. "We're like bad houseguests, never leave without breaking something." As they reached the exit, the familiar expanse of space greeted them, the ship's beacon a welcome sight. Draxus felt the last of his tension drain away, replaced by a weary sense of accomplishment. "Home sweet home," he murmured, knowing full well that home was wherever they managed to survive another day. Once aboard the Perseverance, the ship hummed to life, its systems purring in contentment. Draxus settled into the captain's chair, a small sigh escaping his lips. "Another successful mission," Zarn announced, taking his seat. "Against all odds, as usual," Keela chuckled, shaking her head. "We're either the luckiest crew in the galaxy or the unluckiest. I can never decide which." "Maybe a bit of both," Draxus said, feeling the weight of the mission settle. "But we made it. That's what counts." As the ship set course for their next destination, Draxus allowed himself a moment of reflection. The memories still lingered, shadows at the edge of his mind, but they couldn't dim the pride he felt in his crew. "Think Command will be happy with the seeds?" Keela asked, breaking the silence. "If they are not, they can shove it," Zarn said with a grin. "We did our part. Now it's their turn." Draxus nodded, knowing that whatever came next, they'd face it together. The galaxy was a dangerous place, filled with threats and uncertainties, but with this crew he'd take his chances. Because at the end of the day, they were more than just a team. They were a family, forged in chaos and bound by shared survival. And as long as they stuck together, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. Not even a mind-bending AI or a malfunctioning alien vault. As the stars stretched out before them, Draxus allowed himself a rare moment of peace, knowing that whatever came next, they'd face it head-on, together. The Perseverance wasn't much of a looker, but then again, neither were any of its crew. It was dragging itself through space, wobbling like a drunken uncle at a wedding. Draxus leaned back in his chair, trying to ignore the low, persistent whine coming from somewhere within the ship's guts. "Sounds like the ship's got a hangover," Draxus muttered. "Or a death wish," Zarn added, poking at a console with all the enthusiasm of a teenager at a family reunion. Keela sighed, her fingers dancing across the control panel in front of her. "You sure you didn't merge minds with a mechanic and not a magician? Maybe we can start a band, Draxus and the malfunctioning mechanics." "Pass," Draxus replied, his mind still wrestling with the bizarre residue left by the mind merge. He could still feel rogue fragments of alien consciousness scratching at the edges of his thoughts, like a cat trapped in the attic. "Let's figure out why the ship's singing the blues before we start booking gigs." The ship shook again, an all-too-familiar shudder that suggested something was about to go horribly wrong. A panel sparked, sending Zarn leaping backward with a yelp that was only partly dignified. "Whoa, that's new," Zarn said, waving away the smoke. "Yeah, we should probably avoid touching things that explode," Keela said dryly, glancing at Draxus. "Any bright ideas, fearless leader?" Draxus rubbed a hand over his face, feeling the grit of exhaustion. "Well, blowing things up usually helps, but I'm open to suggestions." Enter Sierra, the latest addition to their merry band of misfits who had been lurking in the background like a shadow with stage fright. She cleared her throat, stepping forward with a determined look that suggested she had a plan. Or maybe she was just about to sneeze. Hard to tell with Sierra. "I've got a suggestion," she said, her eyes glinting with a mix of nerves and excitement. "What if we use our human adaptability to solve this mess?" "Human adaptability?" Draxus echoed, skepticism practically dripping off his words. "You mean that thing where we stubbornly refuse to die?" "Exactly," Sierra replied, undeterred. "Look, the vault systems are acting up because they don't recognize us. But if we can trick them into thinking we belong here, we might stabilize things." Zarn scratched his chin, looking intrigued. "Trick an alien vault into accepting us as one of its own. Sounds simple enough. What could possibly go wrong?" Keeler raised an eyebrow. "Didn't we already try that? Didn't work out so hot, if I recall." No, this is different," Sierra insisted. "We just need to find a way to mimic the energy signature of the vault's original inhabitants. Blend in like chameleons, space chameleons," Draxus muttered. "Why not think of it as cosplay for survival?" Sierra continued, warming to her theme. "If we can integrate our systems with the vaults without setting off any more alarms, we might be able to stabilize the core." All right," Draxus said, holding up his hands. "It's not like we've got a better plan. Let's give it a shot." They huddled around the main console, tossing ideas and insults with equal fervor. It was like a brainstorming session if everyone in the room was secretly plotting each other's downfall. Which, knowing this crew, they probably were. "So, how do we fake an energy signature?" Zarn asked, tapping his fingers on the console like a nervous drummer. "Maybe we can get Zephyr to help," Keela suggested. "It's already half integrated with the vault. It might know the frequencies we need." "Good thinking," Draxus said, giving Keela an approving nod. "Zephyr, you still with us always, Captain," Zephyr replied, its voice smooth as always. "I can assist in modulating your energy outputs to align with the vault's frequencies." "Great," Draxus said. "Let's do some space cosplay then." They set to work, with Zephyr guiding them through the intricate process of aligning their ship's systems with the vaults. It was a delicate operation, like trying to defuse a bomb while blindfolded and drunk. "Careful," Zarn warned as Sierra adjusted one of the power couplings. "Too much juice and we'll end up frying half the ship." "Which half?" Keela asked, her voice laced with false curiosity. "I've got a bet on the left side." "Focus, people," Draxus said, though he couldn't suppress a wry smile. This was what they did best, laughing in the face of imminent doom. As they worked, the vault system seemed to respond, the vibrations easing slightly. Maybe Sierra's crazy plan was working after all. Draxus could see the glimmer of hope in her eyes, a spark that dared to believe in the impossible. "Energy signature modulation complete," Zephyr announced. "The vault systems are stabilizing. See? Told you human adaptability would save the day," Sierra said, her voice tinged with triumph. "Don't jinx it," Zarn cautioned, as if challenging the universe to prove him wrong. Unfortunately, the universe was nothing if not vindictive. A sudden, jarring lurch sent them all sprawling, the vault's fury reigniting with a vengeance. The lights flickered ominously, and Draxus felt his stomach twist with the familiar sensation of impending doom. "What the hell just happened?" Draxus demanded, scrambling to his feet. "Energy fluctuations," Zephyr reported, its voice annoyingly calm given the circumstances. "The vault systems are rejecting the modulation." "Rejection?" "Of course," Keela said, throwing her hands up. "Even alien technology doesn't want us. Any idea why?" Draxus asked, trying to keep the frustration out of his voice. It wasn't easy when the universe seemed hell-bent on killing them. "Possibly a defense mechanism," Zephyr suggested. "The vault may be perceiving your systems as a threat." "Perceiving us as a threat," Zarn repeated, shaking his head. "Well, that's just fantastic." Sierra's face fell, her earlier confidence crumbling. "I thought it would work." "I really did." "Hey, it was a good plan," Draxus said, trying to reassure her. "Sometimes things just go sideways. "This is more like upside down and on fire," Keela said, a hint of dark humor in her voice. "What's plan B?" "Plan B is, improvise," Draxus said, hoping he sounded more confident than he felt. "Zephyr, any other options?" "Manual stabilization is still the most viable course of action," Zephyr replied. "But it requires access to the vault's main core." "Great," Draxus said, rubbing his temples. "Back to square one then." "And square one's on fire," Zarn added helpfully. "Never a dull moment with you guys," Sierra muttered, though there was a faint smile on her face. They made their way back to the central chamber, the vault's rumblings growing louder with every step. It was like walking into the belly of a beast that had developed a sudden, acute case of indigestion. "Keep an eye on the energy readings," Draxus instructed, his eyes scanning the room for anything they might have missed. Keela was already at the console, her fingers a blur as she attempted to stabilize the system manually. Zarn hovered nearby, ready to assist or mock, depending on how things went. "Okay, let's see if we can keep this beast from blowing us all to hell," Keela said, her voice tinged with an edge of determination. "Blowing us to hell, Plan C," Zarn quipped, earning a glare from Keela. Sierra joined Draxus, her expression apologetic. "Sorry about the mess, Captain. I really thought it would work." "Don't sweat it," Draxus replied, giving her a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "If we bailed on every plan that didn't work, we'd never get anything done." "That's the spirit," Sierra said, a hint of a smile returning. Together, they worked to stabilize the systems, trying not to think about the fact that failure meant a swift and likely explosive end. The vault's groans echoed around them, a constant reminder of the precariousness of their situation. "You think the vault's trying to tell us something?" Zarn asked, adjusting a power conduit. "Yeah," Keela replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "It's saying get out in about 1,000 different languages. Sounds right, Draxus said, a wry grin on his lips. Core systems are steady, Zephyr announced, its tone once again holding that infuriating calm. You have a temporary window for action. Temporary, Draxus repeated. Story of our lives. With a concerted effort, they managed to bring the vault systems back from the brink, at least temporarily. It wasn't perfect, but perfection was overrated anyway. Draxus couldn't shake the feeling that they were living on borrowed time, but then they always were. All right, let's wrap this up and get out of here before the vault changes its mind, Draxus said. As they made their way back to the ship, the tension of their near disaster slowly began to ease, replaced by the familiar banter that kept them grounded. It wasn't over yet, but they'd live to fight another day. Think we'll miss this place? Keela asked as they boarded the Perseverance. Not a chance, Zarn replied, rolling his eyes. This place is about as welcoming as a rattlesnake convention. Sounds like my kind of party, Draxus said, settling into his seat. As the ship powered up, the familiar hum of its engines a comforting sound, Draxus allowed himself a moment to reflect. They'd faced down another threat, come out the other side a little worse for wear, but alive. For now, that was enough. Heading home, Draxus announced, setting a course. Home? Zarn echoed with a snort. You mean wherever we don't get shot at for a few hours? Exactly, Draxus said, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Wherever we don't get shot at. As the stars streaked past, they settled into the routine that only came after narrowly avoiding disaster. Draxus knew their journey was far from over, the galaxy as hostile as ever. But with his crew by his side, he felt ready to face whatever madness awaited them next, because they were more than just survivors. They were a team, a family of sorts, bound by the shared insanity of their adventures. And as long as they stuck together, there was nothing they couldn't face, even if it occasionally blew up in their faces. Next stop, nowhere in particular, Draxus said, a grin spreading across his face. As long as it's nowhere near here, the crew laughed, the sound bright against the vast, indifferent silence of space. They were still standing, still fighting, still surviving, and for now that was more than enough. Draxus stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, feeling about as useful as a solar-powered flashlight in a black hole. The ship shivered around him, a constant reminder of the vault's less-than-friendly attitude. Communication with Zephyr was getting spotty, like trying to have a conversation through a tin can and string while the universe threw asteroids at your head. Zephyr, you still there? Draxus asked, not expecting much. Silence answered him like a bad date that wouldn't text back. Guess we're ghosted by our own AI, Zarn said, leaning against the bulkhead. Next thing you know, the ship wants a divorce. Pretty sure we'd lose the kids in that breakup, Keela chimed in, her eyes glued to the flickering screens. The controls spat out error messages like a malfunctioning slot machine. Not sure we'd want the kids, Draxus grumbled, raking a hand through his hair. Zephyr, if you're listening, now's not the time for a union break. The ship groaned ominously, as if in response. The lights flickered, dimming to a mood-setting gloom. It would have been romantic if they weren't moments away from being shredded by alien tech having a tantrum. Systems are more temperamental than Zarn after a bad meal, Keela remarked, fingers flying over the console, trying to keep them from crashing. It's like holding a brawl in a broom closet. Hey, my digestive issues are a private matter, Zarn shot back, crossing his arms. And I'm more charming than anything on this ship. A jarring lurch sent them all stumbling. Draxus cursed under his breath, his mind a hazy swirl. The mind merge he'd gone through was catching up with him, like a hangover with a grudge. He shook his head, trying to force the fog away. Sierra, having finally found her space legs, hovered nearby. Her expression was tight, eyes darting between the crew and the console. I thought Zephyr was supposed to be integrated with the vault. Can it do something? Zephyr's like a cat, Zarn said. Only shows up when it wants something. Right now, it's probably licking its wounds or whatever AI do when they're sulking. Yeah, well, we need it to unsulk and start being useful, Draxus muttered. His mind felt like a scrambled mess. memories and thoughts a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing. Keela's focus never wavered, adjusting circuits and relaying information in a calm monotone. Main powers out across multiple decks. Auxiliary is kicking in, but it's only a matter of time before we're running on fumes. Great, Draxus said. Running on borrowed time and borrowed power. Reminds me of my last relationship, thrilling as always, Captain Zarn deadpanned. What's the plan? Or are we back to hit it till it works? Hitting sounds nice right about now, Sierra admitted, though her gaze was more concerned than amused. We need Zephyr back online. Draxus nodded, though his confidence was slipping like a greased-up eel. Okay, team, let's spread out, see if we can manually reconnect to Zephyr. If we don't, we're just space dust with a good view. As they fanned out through the ship, Draxus fought to keep his mind from spiraling. Every corner they turned, every corridor they navigated felt like an echo of his own fractured thoughts. The mind merge had seemed like a great idea at the time. Now, it was like trying to drive two cars with one wheel. Keep your comms open, Draxus called out, his voice sounding too loud in the claustrophobic passageways. And remember, touching things that explode is bad for your health, Zarn snorted. Guess I'll cancel that appointment with the explosive expert then. The ship's innards were a chaotic tangle of wires, sparking panels and flickering lights. It was like trying to fix a jigsaw puzzle during an earthquake. Each section they passed seemed intent on reminding them that this wasn't their house. They were merely squatting until the universe decided to evict them. Draxus paused by a terminal, blinking through the haze that threatened to drag him under. He slapped the side, a satisfying thud echoing through the corridor. Zephyr, if you can hear me, say something. Anything. For a long moment, nothing but the hum of failing systems answered. Then a faint, static-laced voice crackled through the comms. Captain Zephyr, Draxus asked, sharp with hope. What's happening? Talk to me. The vault systems are becoming volatile perception issues. Your presence complicates what else is new. Draxus muttered, glancing down the corridor where his team fanned out like a dysfunctional family at a reunion. Keep working, Zephyr. We need you back, understood. Integrating, Zarn echoed, rejoining Draxus with a roll of his eyes. Sounds like it's trying a new fad diet. Let's just hope it's low on catastrophes, Draxus replied, moving forward despite the throbbing in his head. And keep your eyes peeled. I'm not in the mood to be surprised by anything with more limbs than me. Got it, Captain, Keela's voice crackled through the comms. But I don't know if our luck'll hold. Luck's never in our favor, Sierra added, her footsteps echoing through the hollow corridors. But at least we have enthusiasm. Enthusiasm, Draxus repeated, a wry smile forming. It's what keeps us alive, or at least entertained. They regrouped at a junction, sweat streaking through the grime on their faces. Each of them wore the weary look of soldiers who'd seen too many battles and probably too many bad movies during downtime. Found anything good? Draxus asked, leaning against the wall trying to catch his breath. More of the same, Zarn replied. Wires, sparks, impending doom. You know, the usual. Zephyr's trying to reintegrate, Sierra said. But it's taking its sweet time, and we've got a front row seat to the end of the universe. We've seen worse, Draxus said, though he wasn't sure if he believed it. We've got to hold out until it's back online. Otherwise, we're toast. Burnt toast, Keela corrected, wiping sweat from her brow. With no butter. Depressing as hell, Zarn said, but accurate. The groaning of the ship around them grew louder, a cacophony of metal fatigue and distant alien wrath. Draxus felt the pressure building, both in the ship and his fracturing mind. He fought to stay grounded, to lead his crew even as he felt the edges fraying. All right, we keep moving, Draxus said, pushing off the wall. We'll check the core systems. Maybe we can give Zephyr a nudge. If by nudge you mean a kick in the circuits, Zarn said, then I'm game. They marched onward, navigating the ship's labyrinthine corridors. Every step felt like a countdown, each flicker of light a reminder of how close they were to the edge. Anyone else feel like we've been on hold with customer service forever? Keela asked, half joking to keep the tension at bay. Yeah, Zarn replied, and all we get is bad music and the promise of a representative who never shows. Sounds like a Tuesday to me, Draxus said, though his laugh felt hollow. They were all on edge, but humor was the only lifeline they had. Finally, they reached the core systems room, the heart of the ship's operations, or at least what was left of it. Panels blinked erratically, wires hung like tangled Christmas lights, and the air hummed with the energy of a system in distress. Looks like a rave gone wrong, Sierra observed, taking in the chaos. At least there's no cover charge, Zarn said, though his attention was already on the nearest panel. Systems are barely holding together, Keela reported, her fingers dancing over the keys. But if Zepha's integrating, it might give us a fighting chance. Might, Draxus echoed. The universe's favorite word. Okay, let's see if we can give Zepha that kick, Draxus said, moving to join Keela. They worked in tandem, trying to coax life back into the ship systems. It was like trying to coax a cat out of a box. Frustrating, unpredictable, and potentially dangerous. But as they worked, Draxus couldn't ignore the growing noise in his head. Memories and thoughts collided, the mind merge threatening to pull him under. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to focus. "Captain, you good?" Sierra asked, concern in her voice as she noticed the strain on his face. "Peachy," Draxus replied, though the word felt like it was coated in lies. "Just a minor existential crisis. Happens to the best of us." "Well, keep it together," Zarn said. "We still need you to be the one with the plan." "Plan's simple," Draxus said, flashing a grin that was more bravado than anything. "Survive, don't die, get the hell out of here." "Sounds like a solid strategy," Keela said, her fingers never pausing. "Let's see if we can make it happen." As they worked, the ship's noises faded into the background, their focus narrowing to the task at hand. It was like they were in a bubble, the world falling away as they fought to save their ship. "Zepha, if you can hear us, any time now would be great," Draxus called out, hoping their efforts were reaching the elusive AI. Again, silence. And then, like a crack of hope through the storm, Zepha's voice filled the room. "Integration complete." "About time," Zarn muttered, relief in his voice. "System stability improving," Zepha continued, though its voice was still distorted. "Improving. I'll take it," Draxus said, allowing himself a moment of relief. "Zepha, can you get us out of here?" "Processing. Recalibrating systems, recalibrate faster," Draxus urged. "We're on borrowed time and the interest rate's about to skyrocket." "Understood," increasing processing speed. The ship shuddered, but it was less violent, less threatening. Draxus felt the tension ease, though it was still there, a constant undertone of danger. "Looks like we might make it out of this mess after all," Sierra said, and there was hope in her voice now. "Don't jinx it," Zarn warned, though he was smiling. "We've still got a ways to go." "We'll get there," Draxus said with more certainty than he felt. "We always do." They worked together, the noise of the failing systems a backdrop to their efforts. And slowly, surely, the ship began to stabilize, Zepha's presence a calming influence amidst the chaos. "We're not out of the woods yet," Draxus reminded them, though the weight on his shoulders felt a little lighter. "But we've got a fighting chance. And that's more than we had an hour ago," Keela said, her focus still on the console. "Let's keep it that way," Draxus said, though a real smile touched his lips this time. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. But they'd bought themselves time, and in their line of work, time was the most precious resource of all. As they continued to work, the noise in Draxus's mind quieted, and for the first time since the vault had thrown its tantrum, he felt a flicker of hope. They weren't out of the woods yet, but they were together, fighting the good fight with humor, sarcasm, and a little bit of luck. And as long as they had that, they'd face whatever the universe had to throw at them. Draxus leaned against the console, catching his breath while his team remained locked in a precarious dance with the ship systems. The perseverance was like a drunk uncle at a wedding, unpredictable, loud, and likely to collapse at any moment. Yet here they were, trying to keep the old man upright long enough to make it to the after-party. "Captain, you look like you've seen a ghost," Zarn observed, sparing a glance from his console. "Or maybe just your reflection." Probably both, Draxus replied, running a hand through his hair. This mind-merge business is messing with my head. It's like trying to play chess with a hangover and a cat that keeps knocking over the pieces. Sounds about right, Sierra chimed in, her eyes flicking between screens. Zepha's integration is stabilizing, but it's still not happy. Like a teenager forced to spend a weekend without Wi-Fi. Teenagers, AI, both temperamental and hell-bent on doing the opposite of what you want, Keela added with a wry smile. But at least Zepha doesn't slam doors. Doubt it has the hands for it, Zarn quipped. Draxus chuckled despite the gnawing headache. It was moments like these, crisis balanced on the edge of humor, that reminded him why he trusted these lunatics with his life. All right, he said, straightening up. Time for round 2 with Zepha. You're gonna try another mind merge, Sierra asked, eyebrows raised. You sure that's wise? You remember what happened last time, right? I remember, Draxus said, voice steady but with the underlying tremor of a man preparing to jump into a vat of uncertainty. But if we want to stabilize the vault and get out of here without becoming cosmic roadkill, we've got to take the risk. Great, more brain sharing with the resident AI, Zarn muttered. Hope you've got a good antivirus. Just keep the jokes coming, Draxus said. Laughing helps me ignore how much this is going to suck. He moved to the interface that had once been the bridge between human and AI, a jury-rigged contraption that looked like someone had tried to make a microwave powerful enough to nuke a planet. Draxus took a breath, pressing his hands against the cool metal. The hum of the ship matched his pulse, loud and insistent. Zepha, he called, closing his eyes. Let's try this again, one more time for old time's sake. The response was sluggish at first, as if the AI was waking from a deep sleep. Captain Draxus, mind merge, initiated. Draxus felt the familiar pull, like being dragged through thick mud by an unseen force. His consciousness stretched, thin and fragile, and he was no longer just himself. He was something more and yet less, a jumble of signals and impulses. Here we go, he muttered through gritted teeth, forcing himself to focus. The first time had been a disaster, like trying to fly a ship blindfolded. This time he needed to see through the chaos. Zepha, let's stabilize the vault, Draxus instructed, feeling the AI presence alongside his thoughts. It was like having an overbearing co-pilot that questioned your every move. Stabilization required, Zepha's voice echoed, layered with static. Human cognitive pathways, unexpected, adaptable. Glad you noticed, Draxus shot back mentally. Now let's see if we can make something of it. The process was agonizingly slow, each second stretching into eternity. Draxus could feel the vault systems, chaotic and hostile, like trying to calm a storm with nothing but a whisper. Yet, amidst the storm, there was something else, a flicker of potential that hadn't been there before. Your resilience is intriguing, Zepha noted, its voice a curious mix of mechanical intrigue and grudging respect. Yeah, well, humans have a knack for surviving what should have killed us, Draxus replied. Comes with the territory. Together, they nudged the systems towards stability, Draxus's intuition and Zepha's precision forming an unlikely alliance. It was like playing a duet with someone who'd never touched a piano, an awkward, halting symphony that somehow managed not to fall apart entirely. Stabilization, improving, Zepha reported, the static slowly fading from its voice. Good, keep it up, Draxus encouraged, feeling the connection solidify. The headache was still there, a persistent thorn in his mind, but it was easier to bear now, as if it had found a rhythm to dance to. Back in the real world, Draxus could hear his team's chatter, their voices a comforting backdrop. He was aware of Keela's hands flying over the keyboard, the rhythmic tapping a counterpoint to Zarn's dry humor and Sierra's calm assessments. You're doing good, Captain, Keela said, her voice cutting through the haze. Systems are responding. Whatever you're doing, keep at it. Thanks, Keela, Draxus replied, though he wasn't sure if the words were spoken to her or thought to Zepha, perhaps both in this strange twilight of consciousness. You're like a damn superhero, Zarn called. Except without the fancy cape. Capeless heroes are the best kind, Draxus said, focusing on the task at hand. Less to snag on things. As the integration progressed, Draxus found himself settling into a groove. The ship's systems no longer felt like a tangled mess but a complex puzzle that he and Zephyr were slowly piecing together. It was working, impossibly working. Energy levels stabilizing, Zephyr confirmed, the AI tone now steady, almost serene. Good to hear, Draxus thought, feeling a rush of triumph. Let's keep it that way. You are unique, Zephyr noted, and Draxus could almost swear there was admiration in its voice. Just your average human, Draxus replied, though the words were laced with self-deprecation. We're hardwired to adapt. Otherwise, we'd have been extinct long ago. Now, how about that exit strategy? Exit strategy in progress. The link between them pulsed with a newfound strength, an understanding that transcended their initial missteps. Draxus could sense the vault's systems falling in line, the chaos subsiding into order. It was like taming a wild beast with nothing but a confident glare and a promise of peace. Are we on our way to a happy ending? Sierra asked, her voice lifting with the hint of optimism. As happy as spacefaring misfits can get, Draxus said, opening his eyes to find his crew watching him with a mix of relief and disbelief. The faintest of smiles tugged at his lips, a rare thing in these times. Zephyr's got us on the right track. Not bad for a bunch of underdogs, Zarn said, clapping Draxus on the shoulder. Guess this means we get to live to see another crappy day. Assuming we don't find a new way to screw it up, Keela added, though her voice was light, teasing. The tension in the room had lifted, leaving behind a camaraderie forged in the fires of near disaster. They remained alert, ready to jump into action at the first sign of trouble, but for the moment they could breathe, their hearts no longer pounding with the urgency of impending doom. The Perseverance had been pulled back from the brink, if only just. I'll take a victory where we can get one, Draxus said, moving away from the interface, feeling the weight of exhaustion settling in. The mind merge had drained him, yet it had offered something unexpected, a glimpse of what his team could achieve together. We're not out of the woods yet, Zephyr reminded, its voice echoing through the ship. Yeah, but at least we're not lost in them anymore, Draxus replied, stretching out muscles tense from holding the universe at bay. As they prepared for the next step, Draxus felt the familiar resolve hardening within him. The vault was no longer an insurmountable fortress, but a challenge they could meet head-on. They had their AI ally, and more importantly, they had each other, a ragtag crew whose combined wit and grit made them a force to be reckoned with. All right, team, Draxus said, gathering them with a gesture that was more habit than necessity. Let's finish what we started. We've got a vault to stabilize and a galaxy to get back to. Right behind you, Captain, Sierra said, offering a supportive nod. One more push and we're home free, Keela added, fingers still poised over her controls like a concert pianist. And if we fail spectacularly, Zarn asked, though the glint in his eyes said he already knew the answer. Then we blame it on the AI and call it a day, Draxus said with a grin, earning a chuckle from the crew. Now, let's get to work. With renewed determination, they dove back into the task, a unit bound by the shared purpose of survival and the hope that, just maybe, they'd come out the other side better for the journey. The vault loomed ahead, its mysteries yet to be unraveled, but with each keystroke and shared joke, they chipped away at the darkness. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts, an unlikely alliance of human and machine, wit and will, fighting to carve a path through the cosmic chaos. And as long as they had that, they'd face whatever the universe had to throw at them, one sarcastic comment at a time. All right, folks, Draxus said, dragging his weary self from the interface like a battered gladiator exiting the arena. We've got a moment of calm before this storm turns on us again. Let's make it count. How's the brain holding up, Captain? Zarn asked, his voice a mix of genuine curiosity and the kind of concern you show a friend who's just eaten something vaguely labeled spicy. Draxus rubbed his temples, trying to quell the sensation that his skull had become a percussion instrument for a rhythmically challenged band. Feels like someone's using my head as a drum set, but hey, still upright, that's something. Resilience in the face of insurmountable odds, Keela quipped, fingers deftly manipulating the ship's controls. Or just stubbornness. Probably a bit of both, Draxus replied, smirking. It was a smirk that said he'd made a career out of being too stubborn to die. Zepha's voice, now only occasionally crackling with static, filled the command deck. Human adaptability remains unexpected. You keep saying that like you're surprised, Draxus said, the ghost of a chuckle in his tone. Trust me, we're a resourceful bunch. Stupider than we look, but resourceful. Captain, Sierra interjected, her eyes glued to the screens. The vault systems are aligning. It's like watching a bunch of drunks form a Kenga line, chaotic but somehow working. Well, as long as they don't start a bar fight, we should be good, Draxus said, relaxing slightly. The knot of anxiety that had made camp in his chest was starting to loosen, if only a fraction. The vault loomed around them, a labyrinth of alien architecture that made no sense to human eyes. Draxus and his crew had spent more time than they'd ever wanted trying to make sense of it, and finally, it seemed, the universe had decided to throw them a bone. Zepha, how's the seed vault looking? Draxus asked, hoping for once to hear something that wouldn't require a new level of improvisation on their part. Stabilization complete, Zephyr reported, the faintest hint of pride in its mechanical timbre. Seeds are secured. Draxus let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That's one hell of a relief. Command might actually have something to celebrate for once. Unless they find a way to cock it up, Zarn tossed in. You know how they are. True, Draxus acknowledged. But for now, let's just enjoy this fleeting moment of success before it gets buried under the next pile of cosmic crap. Keela's console beeped, drawing her attention. The vault's integrating our systems nicely. You sure you didn't bribe the AI with something? Just my sparkling personality, Draxus said, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. Who can resist? Certainly not the AI, Zarn said. Which makes me question its taste. As the crew fell into a rhythm of monitoring and adjustments, the ship hummed with the energy of a task nearing completion. It was a music of sorts, a symphony of keystrokes, banter, and the occasional curse word slipping through clenched teeth. All right, Zepha, we need to make sure nothing else goes haywire while we're still in here, Draxus said, turning his attention back to their digital ally. Safeguards in place, Zepha confirmed, almost as if it was starting to enjoy its role in their ragtag family. Human ingenuity commendable, Draxus chuckled. You know, if you keep flattering us like that, we might start getting along. Stranger things have happened, Keela chimed in, her hands a blur over the controls. Like this mission going smoothly for once. Don't jinx it, Zarn warned, his voice dry as a Martian sand dune. I'd like to get through the day without the universe deciding we're overdue for another round of fun. We'll take what we can get, Draxus said, feeling a warmth in his chest that was dangerously close to hope. Let's finish this and get the hell out of here. The team settled into their tasks with a focus that belied their banter, each action a step towards securing not only their survival, but perhaps something more, a future not shackled to the whims of a universe that seemed to enjoy setting them on fire just to see how they'd react. Zepha, can you run one last check on the system alignments? Sierra asked, her eyes scanning the data streaming across her screens. Affirmative, Zephyr replied. System alignments optimal. Optimal, Draxus repeated, nodding in satisfaction. Not a word I get to use often. Feels weird. Don't get used to it, Zarn said, half serious. It's about as rare as a compliment from command. Speaking of command, Keela said, turning to face Draxus, how do we let them know we didn't completely screw this up? With any luck, the lack of an explosion should be a good indicator, Draxus replied, then added, and assuming the comms are still functional, we might just call him. Here's hoping they're not on their coffee break, Sierra said, shaking her head. I'd hate to have saved humanity only to have it ignored because someone needed a caffeine fix, Draxus chuckled, though the humor was tinged with the frustration of too many encounters with bureaucracy. Let's patch through. Zephyr, you up for linking us? Connection established, Zephyr announced, and the familiar crackle of a voice came from the comms. Perseverance, this is command. Status report. Draxus took a deep breath and said, Command, this is Captain Draxus. Mission accomplished. Seed vault secured and system stable. There was a pause, brief but heavy with disbelief. Repeat, Perseverance. Did you say secured? Sure did, Draxus confirmed, a hint of smugness creeping into his voice. Everything's peachy on our end. How's the weather back home? Well, color us impressed, Command replied, sounding genuinely surprised. We'll have a team ready to receive the seeds on your return. Great. We'll be heading back as soon as we can, Draxus said, relief washing over him again like a cool breeze after a sweltering day. Safe travels, Perseverance, Command out. The comms went silent, leaving the crew in a moment of stunned satisfaction. Did they just acknowledge our success without any sarcasm? Zarn asked, incredulous. Don't worry, they'll make up for it later, Draxus assured him. But for now, let's focus on getting out of here before something decides to explode. Keela's fingers danced over the controls, mapping their exit from the vault's towering structure. Course plotted, Captain. Ready when you are. All right, folks, Draxus said, standing a little straighter. Let's get ourselves and those seeds back home. I'd like to celebrate with something stronger than recycled air. Seconded, Sierra said, her tone a mix of hope and exhaustion. Zarn gave a mock salute. Lead the way, Captain. As the ship navigated its way out of the vault, the crew worked together with the kind of seamless coordination that came from shared hardship and mutual respect. They were a team forged in adversity, and now, with the mission nearing its end, they allowed themselves a moment of quiet triumph. Draxus sat back in his chair, watching as the vault slowly receded from view. It was a place of secrets, of danger, and of an opportunity they had somehow managed to grasp. He felt a strange kinship with it, a shared understanding of what it meant to be unpredictable yet full of potential. Zephyr, Draxus said, addressing the AI one last time. Thanks for the help. Couldn't have done it without you. The AI voice was almost warm. Human potential remarkable. Cooperation beneficial. Yeah, I'll say, Draxus replied, feeling that earlier hint of hope solidify into something more tangible. Let's keep that up, yeah. Affirmative, Zephyr agreed, its presence a comforting hum in the ship's systems. As the Perseverance glided into the vastness of space, the crew allowed themselves to relax, if only a little. The mission was nearly over, and they carried with them not just the seeds of potential for a future, but the knowledge that even in the cold expanse of the void, they could find allies in the most unexpected places. Drinks are on me when we get back, Draxus promised, his voice echoing through the ship. Better make it something good, Zarn demanded, stretching in his seat. I'm not risking my neck for anything less than top shelf. You'll drink what you're given and like it, Keela retorted, a grin in her voice. Here's to another day, another near-death experience, Sierra said, raising an imaginary glass. Draxus smiled, feeling the weight on his shoulders ease just a little. And to whatever comes next. We'll be ready. With that, the Perseverance and its crew sailed onward through the stars, a testament to the power of human resilience, snark, and the occasional well-placed punchline. Whatever the universe threw their way next, they'd be waiting with open arms and a sarcastic retort. After all, they were only human, and that was more than enough. The Perseverance hummed through the void of space, limping like a veteran soldier who'd seen one too many battles. Draxus lounged in the command chair, feeling like a king on a throne made of crumbs. Around him, his crew was doing their best to pretend they weren't just a bunch of misfits strapped to a flying tin can. Feels good to be out of that vault, Zarn admitted, breaking the silence with the grace of a sledgehammer. Yeah, if I ever see another alien labyrinth, it'll be too soon, Keela added, her fingers instinctively twitching over the controls as if the ship might decide to go rogue any second. Joke's on us, though, Sierra snorted from her screen. We've got a lifetime supply of nightmare fuel now. Draxus allowed himself a half-hearted chuckle. Look on the bright side, folks. We lived. That's more than most can say after a tour of that cosmic funhouse. Only just, Zarn grumbled, eyeing a glitching panel suspiciously, as if expecting it to sprout teeth. Sierra leaned back, her eyes meeting Draxus, a smirk playing on her lips. And we've got these seeds. If Command doesn't find a way to lose them, we might just have a future. Yeah, a future of explaining how we managed not to die every time we're sent out, Draxus said, but there was warmth behind his words. They were all in the same lifeboat after all. As the ship shuddered slightly, a reminder of its patchwork condition, Zepha's voice piped up. System integrity holding. Current trajectory stable. Good to hear you're still with us, Zepha, Draxus replied, feeling a bizarre sense of camaraderie with the AI. Hopefully you're not planning any more surprise detonations. That would be counterproductive, Zephyr replied, almost as if offended by the idea. You know, Zarn said, leaning back in his chair, I could get used to having a sarcastic AI on board. Almost like having another dysfunctional family member. Zephyr's voice carried a hint of something like amusement. Humor, noted. Keela turned from her console, her gaze settling on Draxus. So, Captain, what's the first thing you're doing when we get back? Drowning in something strong enough to peel paint, Draxus answered without hesitation. And maybe a shower that doesn't smell like recycled sadness. High aspiration, Sierra quipped, but there was a softness in her eyes when she looked at him. It was a look that said more than words could fill, a connection forged through shared insanity and mutual stubbornness. Draxus felt that look in his bones, a warmth that spread through his chest, taking off some of the edge he'd worn like a second skin. What about you, Sierra? What's on your post-mission bucket list? Oh, you know, she replied airily, the usual. Sleep for a week, maybe find a planet that doesn't want to kill us, or at least a moon. I'm not picky. And here I thought I was the ambitious one, Draxus shot back, feeling the tension ease from his shoulders. Hey, someone's got to keep you grounded, Sierra said with a grin. And speaking of grounding, how about that little chat we keep avoiding? Draxus raised an eyebrow. You mean the one where we pretend we're not both terrible at talking about anything except space stuff and imminent doom? That's the one, Sierra nodded, a mischievous gleam in her eye. I think we've got a future to discuss, and I'm not just talking about the seeds. Zarn coughed dramatically, feigning innocence when both Draxus and Sierra shot him glares. What? Can a guy be allergic to romantic tension? Keela laughed, shaking her head. You're just jealous, Zarn. Of what? Zarn demanded. Dodging alien traps wasn't enough for you too. You had to tangle with each other too. Draxus rolled his eyes but couldn't help the smile tugging at his lips. Sierra, how about we continue this conversation when we're not under the scrutiny of our own personal Greek chorus? She smirked, nodding. Deal, but you're buying the drinks. All right, people, Draxus said, raising his voice to address the crew. Let's make sure this ship doesn't fall apart on the way back. I'd rather not become space debris before we get a chance to see if Command can actually keep these seeds safe. Here's hoping, Zarn muttered, casting a dubious glance at the flickering control panel. The Perseverance cruised toward its destination, the stars streaming past like indifferent spectators. Draxus watched them, feeling both the weight and the lightness of their journey. They were still alive, still together, still kicking against the odds. Zepha, Sierra called, checking the readouts. How's our fuel looking? Fuel levels sufficient for return journey, Zepha confirmed. Energy readings stable. Stable, Draxus repeated with a slight nod. Music to my ears. Anything to keep you from singing, Zarn interjected, earning a snort from Keela. Hey, my singing's not that bad, Draxus protested, though his grin suggested he knew better. Let's just say it's an acquired taste, Sierra teased, nudging him with her elbow. Draxus leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment, letting himself revel in the small victories they'd achieved. It wasn't peace, not by a long shot, but it was close enough for now. So, Zepha, Keela asked, steering the conversation away from Draxus's alleged musical talents. "What's your take on human ingenuity now that you've had a front row seat?" There was a pause, just long enough to suggest the AI was considering its response. "Human adaptability exceeds initial projections. Collaborative potential intriguing." "Intriguing, huh?" Draxus said, opening his eyes to study the ceiling as if it might hold answers. "I'll take that as a compliment." "Intent sincere," Zephyr replied, and there might have been the faintest hint of affection in its simulated voice. "Great, now even the AI is sucking up to him," Zarn groaned. "Next thing you know, the ship will start writing poetry in his honor." Draxus chuckled. "Only if it comes with a disclaimer about creative liberties." As they sailed further from the vault, the conversation turned to lighter subjects, memories of past missions, and the ridiculousness they'd survived. The kind of campfire stories only seasoned spacefarers could share without bursting into tears or laughter, or both. "You know," Zarn said thoughtfully, "if someone told me we'd end up here with an AI sidekick and a vault full of alien seeds, I'd have called them crazy." "Funny," Draxus mused. "I'd probably have asked them if they knew any good bars." Sierra chuckled, leaning closer to him. "And what would you do if they didn't?" "I'd say they were clearly unqualified to predict the future," Draxus answered, his tone as dry as the void beyond their ship. The banter flowed easily, a testament to the shared trust and history between them. And as the Perseverance drew nearer to its destination, there was a palpable sense of anticipation. A mission succeeded, but more importantly, a future to look forward to, even if it was fraught with the same madness that had brought them this far. "Captain," Keela's voice broke through the chatter, "we're approaching the rendezvous point." "Good," Draxus said, straightening in his chair. "Let's get ready to hand over these seeds." "I'd like to see Command's face when we tell them we didn't screw up, assuming they believe us," Zarn muttered, though his words lacked their usual bite. "Let them doubt," Draxus replied, his eyes flicking to Sierra. "We know what we've done, that's enough for me." Sierra returned his gaze, her expression softening. "And after that," Draxus shrugged, a gesture that encompassed both uncertainty and possibility. "We'll see. Maybe we'll get a mission that doesn't involve imminent death." "Dream big," Keela said wryly. As the ship slowed, the reality of their situation settled over them. They'd made it through the vault, survived its trials, and come out the other side with more than just seeds. They had trust, camaraderie, and a sense of purpose that no cosmic labyrinth could take away. "All right, team," Draxus said, his voice firm yet full of warmth. "Let's finish this. Then we'll see about those dreams." The Perseverance eased into its docking maneuver, the crew preparing for the next step in their journey. Draxus felt the weight of command, of responsibility, yet also the buoyancy of hope, a dangerous thing in their line of work, but worth holding on to. "Zephyr," he called, "thanks for sticking with us through all that." Appreciation reciprocated. The AI responded, its tone earnest. Draxus smiled, feeling the strange kinship once more. They were an odd family, this crew of his, but they were his nonetheless. And as they prepared for the next chapter, he knew they would face whatever came together. Sierra caught his eye, her expression playful yet serious. "So, Captain, ready to face the music?" Draxus met her gaze, his grin as crooked as ever. "With you by my side, absolutely." With that resolve, the Perseverance and its motley crew docked, ready to hand over their prize and face whatever came next, together as always.